Good morning. Hi, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. We have a lot of information to cover. My name is Kalia Martin. I use she, they pronouns, and I am the program manager over the Climate Fund at FCYO. And I am so excited that you all are here this morning, this afternoon, depending on your time zone. But if you're here, we're assuming that you're here to learn more about the Youth Organizing for Climate Action and Racial Equity Capacity Building Fund, AKA Yo Care. If you're not here for that, welcome anyway. You should hang out for a while. So we're going to give you a lot of the information surrounding this project and also just tell you more about FCYO in general. We're going to launch a poll for you all if you can't see it already. And so this is just a little bit to learn more about where you're tuning in from. And then just again wanting to get to know more about what's going on in this field, which as you'll find out is the overall theme of this program that we're launching for you all. So if there are any questions, feel free. We're going to use the chat for questions. And so we will have staff members and myself monitoring the chat and pulling your questions out of the chat. So if at any point there are questions, go ahead and drop them in. We will also have a detailed amount of time for Q&A. So if you want to hold on to those towards the end, that's also okay. But just know that we'll be monitoring the chat. The first thing we want to do, though, is give you some background about FCYO, which stands for the Funders Collaborative on Youth Organizing. We understand that, we're hoping that a lot of the groups that find out about this fund are actually new to FCYO as we're trying to expand our impact in the field of youth organizing. And so I'm going to pass it to my amazing executive director, Monica, to share some more information about FCYO and who we are as an organization.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome again. We're so happy you are joining us today. We love these opportunities to directly connect with folks in the field of youth organizing that are interested in building, a stronger community and really moving on the most pressing issues of our time. So I'll tell you a little bit more about FCYO if you don't already know much about us. First off, FCYO was founded 22 years ago as a funding collaborative to help bring resources and capacity to the field of youth organizing, which at that moment was just emerging. And while we know young people have been at the forefront of social justice for generations, the field as we describe it today was really in its early stages. And we're excited to have been able to support the field for over 22 years. And so we're a collective of youth organizers and funders that are really advancing youth organizing as a strategy for social change. And the way we do that is partly what you're here for today is both to move resources directly to local and state grassroots organizations that are led by youth of color, queer, trans, young women, young men of color. And then second, to help increase their capacity. So we do a lot of what we call cohort-based grant making, like this cohort is, where we're bringing together a cross-section of organizations from across the country to both resource their work, but help them build stronger connections to each other and strengthen their capacity to build the organizing strategies that will win. And so that's a part of our goal and our history. We also organize funders. We really think that it's critical for funders and youth organizers to be both in strategic conversation with each other and for funders to recognize and understand the power of youth organizing. And so we do a lot of work in philanthropy to help both through our research and data and through some of the qualitative stories that organizers can share and connect with, build the understanding of the way in which youth organizing exists and moves in this moment, and then how including them in a part of your philanthropic strategies is really critical to actually achieving the social transformation that we really want to achieve. And so, we really pride ourselves on both creating that kind of strategic, vulnerable, authentic community where real conversations happen to make meaningful change. And you can find out, of course, more about us on our website, fcyo.org, where you can also find our 2020 field scan, which both tells the story of youth organizing and helps to share some of the data that we've been able to source over the last few years. Next slide. Another important thing to know about FCYO is that we've done the work. We've spent many, many years really kind of assessing the conditions both in our country and nation, but also in the field of organizing and in the field of youth organizing, and to come to some conclusions that help guide the way we do grant making and the way we build with the field. And so we function out of some basic assumptions that we're in a pivotal moment. The threats to our democracy, the threats to our communities, the threats to our environment are huge. And it really is going to take a leveling up of strategy and interconnectedness and building out a long-term vision that will actually help us move meaningful change. Within that, we think young people have really critical roles to play in building the types of movements that are necessary in this moment. But we also know that to reach that new level of power, that we really need the field to be in deeper alignment and more coordination and building a true vision of what a just society looks like. And so we really think about and center our power to win framework. And just some key fundamentals of that are that our movement must achieve the power to transform social and economic conditions. And that's how we define power and how we center some of the organizing strategies that we try to strengthen. And then to do this, we think that the field of youth organizing specifically has work to do to build the base at significant scale. And that may be different based on the context and geography based on your location, but the consideration of base is really critical. To develop broad strategic alliances, so to consider who we're in partnership with and who do we need to be in partnership, who do we need to add into our partnerships to really achieve the type of change that we want to. And then last, to elevate public narrative that promotes our vision of social justice and true democracy. So there's a variety of tactics within organizing, and in the inclusive of a narrative shift that is based and grounded in the organizing strategies to then shift things in the country is really important. And so we just wanted to share a little bit about that because our theory of change and our power to win framework are really what kind of ground and guide us as an institution, and also helped us make the assessment that creating this fund was both really strategic because of the ways in which environmental justice have been critical in the field of youth organizing and the way climate justice is a key issue right now, and how can we make those interconnections. So we're excited to be here with you. We hope that this webinar provides an opportunity for you to get all the information you need to submit a successful application, and we're looking forward to getting to know you more through the course of the next year or so. So I will kick it back to Kalia. Thank you all.
Thank you. And so with that, when we talk about the basic assumption of this being a pivotal moment, I think there's no moment more key and more important in our history than right now, as we're talking about the impacts of the climate crisis and how much time we have to address that huge issue. And so thinking about that issue and understanding that we can't address climate crisis without addressing race, we felt like it was really important to be explicit about addressing climate and racial equity. So we can go to the next slide. And so this overview, just to give some context, the funds that we are giving out come to us courtesy of the JPB Foundation. And essentially they funded us to help us just learn more about the lay of the land as it relates to climate justice advocacy and merging that with existing racial justice efforts. We are very clear in understanding that climate justice is racial justice. And so a lot of groups, I'm sure you all are doing work at the intersections of these issues. And we also know that there are a lot of organizations on both sides who have not yet found ways to effectively implement the messaging required to both articulate the urgency of addressing climate in our solutions to racial issues, and then the essential thing that it is that in order to address the climate crisis, we have to address race. And so we want to use this fund as a way to amplify the work that groups like you all are doing to merge those messages and make those messages even stronger so that we can be more unified in our efforts on all sides of this front. Next slide, please. So the purpose and goals for this fund, I'd like to say are more on the simple side. We're not asking for a lot. The two things we want to do is first build alignment and opportunities for the connection between climate justice and racial justice groups, which we think will increase the organization's capacities on all sides to build meaningful power. And then the second thing is we think it's really important to increase the philanthropic knowledge and commitment to climate justice organizing. So we want to take the lessons and the expertise that you all have and educate funders so that we can pull more dollars from funders directly into the climate justice and racial justice organizing lens as it relates to young people. And so we have a great opportunity to really showcase the power of youth organizing as it relates to connecting these two very critical and very pivotal issues in our time, and get more money so that you all can do that work more effectively. Next slide. And so the outcomes are as follows. We hope that the groups in this cohort will become familiar with FCYO's theory of change, our Power to Win framework, and the Gen Power Labs program. And so if you're selected into this group, and even if you're not, we hope to share more about our theory of change, and in that give you all a framework that helps us figure out how we win and contest for real power to get long-term solutions that affect society as a whole. We hope that we can strengthen the ability to implement the transformation necessary for communities to thrive. And so we hope that by our capacity building program, which is a peer-to-peer learning model as well, we want to include some clarity around how you build a base, how you develop leadership, and then how we can strengthen our advocacy and communications campaigns so that we can best achieve the visions that we have for our society. Another large part of this is that we hope that a lot of cross-sectoral learning will take place. So we want groups who have a very strong foundation on climate messaging to work with the groups who have a very strong and effective messaging on racial justice so that we can blend these two worlds together, because we know that you have to address both to solve either of them. And then lastly, we want to take all of the learnings that come out of this cohort and inform the FCYO's funder education curriculum so that we can, like we said, again, to mobilize funders to push more money out to you all and to other communities who are doing this very important work. Next slide. And so at a glance, this is what the program is going to look like. First, this is an entry tier. So this is for new and past grantees of FCYO. And it's a one-year cohort grant-making initiative that is at $100,000, and it's going to be split into two payments. So the first payment is going to come around August once the group is selected, and then the next payment will come in early 2023. We're going to pick 40 organizations, and FCYO is committed to providing strategic political education tools and materials and helping create the conditions for which organizations can share learning and support one another. And the goal of this capacity building program is to strengthen analyses of all the organizations and then connect you all to one another. So this is a very relationship-centered program. So we're hoping that at most, we want you all to connect with each other and share your expertise and learn from one another. Next slide. And so for the organizations that are applying, which is you all, the commitment that we're expecting for you is essentially we're asking that you all show up and bring your full selves, bring your learning, but also bring your curiosities, bring the challenges that you all are struggling with as an organization. And so we want to increase the capacity for long-term strategy and power building by examining your existing campaigns and your approaches to base building and leadership development models. We also want to help build a collective understanding of the conditions that led to the current political moment and assess the role that young people in particular play in catalyzing these multi-generational movements. And so again, we are asking groups to show up and to participate and really be active in the space, because the space is only going to be as strong and as effective as the folks who show up and commit to doing the work together. Next slide. Okay, so more information about that. We're actually we're expecting 2 people from each organization to be a part of this cohort. The first one, and I'll say this is a very important one, is we need someone from your organization that is an executive leadership. So that might be your executive director or an organizing director or a lead organizer, but this needs to be someone with power to, change the organization as a whole. And then the next person should be a youth organizer or a key staff member or leader. So of course we want someone who's going to be doing the on the ground work with the young people, but what we've learned is that if we only have organizers in rooms who are getting this information, they run into roadblocks because their leadership might not be ready or might not have the education they need to understand the shifts that the organization needs to make as a whole. And so that then kind of like hinders the progress that the youth organizer can do. So in having that executive leadership and the person who's going to be on the ground working together and learning together, it's our hope that that makes it easier for groups to transition and shift in the ways that are going to, as we say, build that capacity for long-term power. And then in terms of time commitment, here's a rough outline of what that's going to look like over the next year. And so the first thing is going to be a 3-day in-person / hybrid cohort convening. So that's going to be in person. We're still finalizing the date, but that is like your first touch point with FCYO, where we're going to get together and start doing some of that critical learning together. And then after that, we're going to have capacity building learning sessions via webinars throughout the time. At the end, we're going to come back in person for a full convening, which will take place in the summer of 2023, where we get to share learnings, talk about our successes and the things that we're going to work on moving forward. And again, in between those, we're going to be having readings and assignments, and then also mid and end of year, end of grant surveys, calls, and reports. And so we're asking folks to show up and make sure that you have a designated person. And we understand that oftentimes these organizations, we might go through transitions in the process of this cohort. So making sure that even if your organization is transitioning and someone can't step in, as much as we'd like to have like a continuation and participation from the people who are there originally, we are also flexible in understanding that if that person can't make it, please send someone else from your organization. And that goes for the learning sessions as well. The other thing I'll say about the learning sessions is that typically we allow for more than just the 2 people who are designated to participate to join those learning sessions, since they are online, and we understand that, you know, you might want to get more of your staff trained on a certain topic. So also feel free, and we'll share more information about that once we get to that point. Next slide. And so these are the requirements for applicants. I won't read through all of them, but of course, one of the most important is that you have a 501c3 or a fiscal agent. We're looking for organizations that are base building organizations. So we mean people who are about mobilizing groups of people with an explicit commitment to anti-oppression and with practice of running grassroots organizing campaigns. We understand that some of your organizations are younger than others, and we're actually hoping to get newer organizations into this field to help support and build you up as you are getting started. But also want to share that base building is a very important thing. And then of course, for this cohort in particular, we're asking that this is an organization organizing around climate justice in BIPOC communities, or an organization who does racial justice organizing and may not be currently working around climate, but is interested in developing a climate justice lens and analysis to your work. So that's a broad range of organizations that are eligible for this grant, and that's what we're hoping for. So please feel free to ask questions to make sure towards the end if your group is going to fit into this category, but we imagine and try to write it in a way that left it as broad as possible to see the full spectrum of organizing as it relates to the climate justice field. Next slide. And so we want to also be transparent about our preferences. For those who are familiar with working in the climate justice space, we often hear that the impacts of the climate crisis are going to be felt first and worst by Black, Brown, and Indigenous folks, as well as poor folks, as well as folks in the global South, in the US and global South. And so we do have a preference given to organizations that are Black-led and Indigenous-led, but we are also looking to fund organizations that are in organizing in areas that are just less funded in general when it comes to the world of philanthropy. And you can refer to FCYO's 2020 funder scan to see which areas those are. We're looking for new and emerging organizations, like I said, and then also understanding that cohorts of organizations in network, alliances, or regions looking to jointly build power, we are interested in helping support that. So you all will apply as individuals, but also name your network and your alliance, just so we know. But that is something that we're also looking at as we're trying to think about how to build effective mass movements. Next slide, please. And I'm gonna check the chat real quick. Okay. So briefly, we'll go over some of the ineligibilities, and this is specific to organizations that provide direct social services that do not have a youth organizing and social change component. And so then you can refer to our definition of youth organizing. Essentially, we're talking about groups that are doing direct services but don't have youth currently in their organizations. We won't be funding any publications or reports or things of that nature unless they are part of an ongoing community organizing effort. So we're saying if that's solely what you are looking to do, we cannot fund you for that at this time. The same with research and litigation. If you're doing that as part of an ongoing community organizing effort, that's fine. But if that's the only thing you're doing, we probably won't be able to support it this time. We also are not able to fund organizations located outside of the US at this time, and we cannot fund any lobbying or support for legislation. So if you're doing election work, it has to be 501c3 compliant. And we understand that some groups do have the capacity to lobby. So just make sure that when you're writing your application, if you do have that C4 arm, that you're not writing in any pieces that will include C4 work, because we cannot fund you for that. And so just make sure to keep those buckets of work that you have separate for this application. Next slide. And so we want to provide a projected timeline. So our request for proposals went out on April 19th, and today is May 4th. You all are in the right place on the right day. So we are at our informational webinar. And so the request for proposals closes on May 30th at 11:59 Pacific time. So if you're on the East Coast, please don't make me do math, but 3 hours after that is when yours closes. We will be reviewing applications June and possibly into July, and we will be making the announcements in July, late July, early August. And in August, we will also release the first $50,000 to the groups. In mid-September, we are planning to have a hybrid convening. So groups who are selected will get more notification or more information about that convening as it gets closer to time. And we understand and acknowledge that between July and September, of being notified that you're selected in September when the convening happens, that is a tight window. And so we're going to be working with you all and communicating frequently so that we can get everybody flights and whatever else we need to do to get folks to the space in person for that convening. So don't feel that pressure. We will be the ones to take on that pressure for you all, but just trust that you'll have a lot of support as we get that off the ground. Next slide. And so now I'm going to pass it to our admin and operations associate, the amazing Jen, to help walk through just a quick how to apply 101 in case folks are not familiar with using the SurveyMonkey platform that we're using for these applications.
Thanks, Kalia. So I'm actually going to switch over to this view, which I think a link's going to be dropped in the chat for this, but this is the main SurveyMonkey apply page for FCYO, where we have the various programs that folks can learn more about and apply for. But we're specifically looking at the Yo Care Fund. So the full RFP is listed on this page, but when you're actually going to apply, you'll just click the apply button. So some of you have used the system before if you've been part of any past cohorts. If the system is new to you, you'll have to register and create a new account. But you would just click the apply button. And since I have an account, I'm going to, and it helps if I my password, which I never got in the first try. But once you're in the actual application for this program, you'll see, yourself listed as the owner of the application. If you have other folks from your organization who are also going to be filling out the application, you can add them as collaborators. So other folks can go in, add to the narrative, help upload any of the documents that you need for your application. And so it'll show you your list of tasks, which seems like a lot, but beyond the organizational information in the narrative section, it's mostly a lot of uploading documents that your organization should already have. But just to walk through some of the sections, for org information, just asking for your organization's name, mission and history, listing the folks from your org who would be the ones participating in this program, checking if you've been a prior grantee of FCYO, and if so, which programs, and then some of just the standard information that we need. So, who's the signing authority for your org, what's the address, contact information, budget, etc. And then for the narrative and proposal section, you'll have the option of either doing your response through replying to the narrative questions through writing up your responses, or you can do a video response. So you can select either or in this case. So if you choose the narrative response, it'll allow you to answer the questions that are listed here. If you choose the video response, it's going to give you the option to upload a video to your application portal. And then we have the EIN, which is just verifying your organization or your fiscal agent is a 501c3. And then this is an opt-in section that we have now. If you want to be included in our youth organizing landscape map, yes or no, you don't have to participate in this if you don't want to. But if you do select yes, it's just providing some information that we can have, to better understand like some of the youth organizations that we have out there. And then the remaining pieces are just uploads. So you'll upload your IRS determination letter, either for yourself or your fiscal agent, a W-9 form, your budget for the current year, the youth organizing budget for the current year, which is optional if you have one for a specific budget for youth organizing, and then your most recent audited financial statement. So once all of those pieces are complete, you'll submit your application, and then your RFP is complete. Currently, the application questions are not available as a Word doc or PDF, but that can be shared out with folks. And with that, I will kick it back to you, Kalia.
Sure, thank you for going through that for us, Jen. And I saw the question about the narrative question, so lets me know that we have the right slides on this info webinar. We did just want to share all of the 6 narrative questions just here so you can see them all. And so as you can see, we have 6 questions, and we're really just wanting to understand what work you're currently doing. FCYO is not a typical funder, so we are not looking for the super polished and like perfect organizations who have the most amazing narrative about their work and can say that they've saved 100 puppies and planted 1,000 trees, right? Like that is great, but we want to understand what's really going on in your organization. What is the work that you are doing? Where are the areas that you all are looking for support with? And like, what have y'all been up to? So when we're talking about campaigns in the last 5 years, we don't want you all to fluff. We understand that the past 2 years have been a global pandemic. So talk to us about how your organization has shifted. And just wanting to let folks know that we are looking for groups who are willing to be vulnerable and transparent. Of course, there is a standard and we want to see some base building efforts. We want to see how you're impacting your communities, but we are not expecting every organization to have all of these polished metrics that they can provide that showcases what amazing work you're doing, because part of the skill building we want to do is teach you all how to better document and like tell the stories of your work in community. And so if there are any questions, since these are the narrative questions, feel free to reach out and ask for clarification or support if there's something that's just not making sense or doesn't exactly feel relevant to your organization. And we're going to provide our contact information at the end if you have those questions. And with that, I will pass it over to my amazing supervisor to go over some of the FAQs, Helena.
Hi, everybody. I'm Helena, and I am the Director of Special Projects at FCYO. So I'm going to go over the FAQs, and as I'm doing this and more questions are coming up, we're going to actually go straight from the FAQs into the Q&A. And so feel free to start thinking about what things you want to ask us in order to help you complete your application. So the first question is, can past grantees apply? Yes. Grantees that have applied to FCYO for different programming can and should apply for this one. And also folks that are currently in OWL can apply. And if you are considering, if you are an organization that is considering to apply for the Level Up Lab, which is another program that is happening at the same time, the staff will make a determination about which one may be a better fit for you. And so, yes, definitely consider applying. Do networks and affiliates fill out an application together? So the answer to that is no. We ask that networks, coalitions, and alliances apply separately from affiliates. And also we are only considering local and statewide networks right now. So regional and national groups will not be considered. What else? What does emerging and new refer to? So we consider organizations that have been established for less than 5 years to be new and emerging, and organizations that have been around longer are also welcome to apply. I am zipping through these, but I'm going to keep going. All right, so what resources are available to learn more about this grant making program? The RFP basically has all of the stuff that Kalia just went through. And also this webinar is being recorded. And so there are those. And then also the staff, myself and Kalia and Jen are more than happy to answer any questions that come up in the course of filling out this, this application. And does my organization have to be a climate justice organization to apply? No, we welcome all issue areas as long as there's a commitment to build the organization's current climate justice analyses into organizing and intentions and plans to take on campaigns that address racial and climate justice in the future. And so the idea is that we want to support and encourage organizations to build out their analyses and also build with each other, right, to do that. So those are the FAQ quick hits. So if there's any questions right now, you can either put your hand up in the using your reactions button, or you can put questions directly into the chat. Let's see. Our travel expenses. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Kalia. Ashley, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just want to go back because you just answered it, and someone wanted clarification. The question is, can you repeat what you said about regional and national groups cannot apply? How do you define regional?
I'm sorry. Did that question? How do we define regional?
Right, like they wanted clarification on what we mean by regional and national groups cannot apply and how we define regional.
Right, so regional would be multi-state at this point. So right now we're considering local and statewide organizations and networks, but we're not considering anything that's beyond a statewide.
Next question, are travel expenses for the in-person meetings events covered by FCYO or by our own organization?
They will be covered by FCYO.
And we are now in the question and answer portion of the agenda. So we'll also bring on Monica again if there's any questions that we feel she can best answer. So y'all feel free to start your questions. I do see a hand from Valerie. Do you want to come off mute?
Yes, thank you. Hi, I'm Valerie Zhuang with the Western New York Youth Climate Council. I do want to ask if it will pose an issue if the organization also engages in lobbying work, but we are centered on a specific 501c3 friendly campaign that we would like to use these funds for.
No, I mean, we know that like that's a part of organizing, right? And it's part of our, and that there are certain, there's a certain portion of budgets that actually can go through that and a 501c3 status. So we don't have a problem with the way organizations are determining the strategies they need to like organize. Only for this grant, it's not something that we specifically will be funding.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
I see another hand from Allison.
Hi, so good to meet y'all. My name's Allison. My pronouns are she, her. I am from a Young Energy Women Activists. And my question is twofold. One is, so I founded the organization when I was 24. Now I'm 28 and I'm still leading it, but I have younger people as part of the organization, and we organize for people who are in their teens and 20s in Hollywood. Like that's our base. So that's my first question is, are we still eligible? We got sent it by a bunch of people. Second is climate is our top priority, and it's integrated in all the work we do, all the organizing, as well as intergenerational relationship building, but we do other things. So are we still eligible? Thanks.
So the short answer to both of that is yes. And yeah, so the organizations can be intergenerational, right, and multi-generational. And so we ask that explicitly just so that we have a sense. And the yes, and this particular capacity building program is for both climate justice and racial justice, and groups that already identify as both.
Dan, I'm going to come to you, but before I want to get to a question in the chat. The question is, did you say FCYO would determine if they fit this program or LOL, even if the programs are different? So within the same organization, if there's two different programs, can an organization have one program in LOL and one in YoCare?
Right. So the reason why the answer is no on this one is because the programs are actually happening at the same time, and they're programs with both capacity building components that are also happening in parallel to each other. And so it would be really hard for an organization to be doing both. So we would decide if there were one that made sense, then we would decide which one makes sense.
And I'll just layer in, like, and that could be a conversation. Like if there's, if you're in communication with the program staff that lead the Gym Power Labs, which is another one of our program, whether that be Christopher June or JMO, and then Helena and Kalia here, like our folks are like talking amongst each other. And if you have like a preference, if it's kind of down to the decision, then I think that communicating that with other program, like with other FCYO members, so that we can kind of come together and discuss it is important. Because the other thing along with capacity that is layered into this is like, we're also just trying to get as many resources out to as many groups as we possibly can.
Thank you for that. One quick answer, how many groups will be funded? We'll be funding 40 groups. And that funding is 1 year, $100,000 general operating costs. Now, Dan, what's your question? Hello.
Hello, thank you. I've enjoyed this. I'm from the Urban League of Rochester, New York. So we're in the Northeast. We're about an hour from Buffalo. So we get a lot of snow. But I've thoroughly enjoyed this. I am the Director of Equity and Advocacy here. And so we have an Interrupt Racism initiative where we're leading organizations through organizational change through a racial equity lens. And one of the groups in our cohort is actually climate. It's a climate change group. And so my question is, as a affiliate of the Urban League, do we qualify to apply? Because our CEO we have a young CEO who's very progressive and aggressive all at the same time. So I was just wondering, are we allowed to apply? Because we have, I'm an OG, but I'm an OG that's not obsolete. So that's why I consider myself, I might be older, but I'm not obsolete. And so we have a multi-generational leadership team. And I was just wondering, we'll be allowed, because I heard national and regional, are we able to apply as a local affiliate? Because the work we do is uniquely with Interrupt Racism is kind of like our baby. So I know I said a lot. I just want to get it out real quick. Thank you.
Okay, I could take this one, Helena. I think that the organizations that will prioritize in this are grassroots, community-based organizing groups. And the way we certainly know that organizing across the board has a long history of being intergenerational, but the critical component for us is that the organization has a youth base or membership, and that base or membership has decision-making power within the organization. So we don't just want like organizations that have programming for young people, but young people must be actively a part of the organizing efforts and a part of the membership base of the organization.
Thank you for that. Question that I see in the chat, and then I'll come to you, Julia, is would the fund consider organizations that recently had leadership transitions as a result of the organization wanting to center base building?
Yes, we will consider that. I feel like I'm giving you a lot of short answers. Yes, no, but yes, this is very clear.
That's perfect. I think we all appreciate these. Are there specific deliverables that need to be completed by the end of the grant timeline?
Yes, so the deliverables are along the lines of full participation in the capacity building program. There's also a midpoint interview process. And then there is a final report due at the end in, I believe, August 2023.
Sure. And now, Julia, feel free to come off mute.
Thanks, Kalia. My question to y'all is, I heard you mention the one organization within a larger collective or coalition applying. And I just wanted to clarify that because I think from our organization standpoint, the young people have been talking about sort of starting a coalition, like as part of this. They wanted to maybe reach out to other orgs and sort of generate that. So we don't have a name like for the coalition we belong to. Would that be acceptable? So we would be sort of like being part of like a nameless organization, a nameless coalition. Is that okay?
You don't have, yeah, I mean, like totally. And we only ask the question around like coalitions or networks that you're a part of, just so that we're aware of the way in which organizations are connecting to each other. And sometimes that's been helpful because then we are like, we know, okay, we're clearly investing in these 5 organizations in this state that are part of this coalition that are actually trying to move something together. So it's not a requirement. If organizations aren't like actively participating in a coalition or network that is connected to this, that's absolutely fine to this issue. It's just only helpful information for us to understand the lay of the like organizing context of which folks are moving within.
Okay, great. And then just one other quick question. I know you talked about the Level Up Labs. It would be like a one or the other, but we also have alumni who are part of applying to the fellowship, the Take Action for Power Fellowship. So that would be okay to combine because those are just members. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. There's a question that I accidentally skipped over. And so it was a question, or maybe I did ask, I'll ask again. What if the C3 work leads to C4 work? Or the strategy is to build a base within a C3 framework, but we know that the work will require legislative action.
Monica, will you take that one?
I mean, these are general operating grants for 501c3 work. Again, like the whole of what your strategy is the whole of your strategy. But like you couldn't specifically name within your grant report or your reporting back to us that you use dollars within the resources that we gave you to go towards C4 activity.
Thank
you know, like talk about, this program is really about capacity building. So the types of things that we certainly want to know about like your overarching campaign work, but we're really trying to strengthen organizations' interconnection with each other and their capacity to organize, right? Build base, develop leaders, build communications and advocacy plans that help support that. So.
Thank you. I'm going to read because there was a question that was asked and answered in the chat, but for folks watching this webinar, I just wanted to read it out loud. So the question is, does the $2 million budget limit apply to the organization as a whole or just youth or our youth organizing budget? And the answer was, we're looking for the organizational budget at being 2 million and under. That's the answer. Or is that different?
Different. Yeah, that's a good question. And thanks for the clarification. If you're a standalone like youth organizing institution, like you're really only organizing young people, then yeah, the budget is 2 million. If you're a multi-gen or intergenerational organization, then we know oftentimes there's project budgets. And so if your project budget for your youth organizing component is under 2 million, but your overall organizational budget is higher, that's also fine.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Let's see, Ashley, do you want to come off mute and ask your question?
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Ashley Edwards from Students Deserve here in LA. I just had a question on the narrative portion. Because the title of the grant really does focus on climate, how, in reality, when I take this back to my grant writing team, how much emphasis do we need to put on climate in our narrative portion? We're an organization that focuses mostly on racial justice with, some of our campaigns going towards clean spaces and all that in schools. And so I'm just wondering how much information I need to tell them to actually include in climate in order to get this proposal approved.
Thank you. That's a great question. I'll let Monica or Helena answer that.
Yep. So again, this is RFP for both climate action and racial justice. And so it's actually not primarily for a capacity building program for climate justice organizations. So you should lift up your racial justice work. And also, if you already have efforts and initiatives that include kind of clean spaces and other programmatic initiatives that address environmental justice, climate justice, feel free to lift that up. And then also in the application, we ask, how does participating in a blended cohort like this help support and develop your analyses and your work? And so definitely lift that up in the application.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that.
Yes, thank you for that question. Quick question that was answered in the chat: can a Latinx-led organization apply? Absolutely. That's not, we listed our preferences, but that was not an exhaustive list. So yes, please. Any person of color led organization is more than welcome to apply, but we also welcome applications from everyone who's operating in this space. Let me see questions in the chat. I see some more C3, C4 questions. Also feel free for some of those questions, because I also imagine they'll be specific to your organization. If you have specific questions about that, please feel free to send us a follow-up email asking those questions, and we can answer you specifically and make sure that we give you like all the information that you're looking for. But I don't want to confuse people by getting into the C3, C4 weeds right now, because I see some very specific questions. So also feel free to reach out to us after this. I will ask this one. It says, could a chapter locally based that is part of a larger organization that is multi-state be eligible?
Yep, I think Monica kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. We're looking to support grassroots-based building organizations. If you're part of a larger organization, that's fine. And so we trust that the organization that is applying for grassroots organizing work.
Thank you for that. Okay, I'll ask this one. Regarding maximum organization budget, as a multi-state organization, our national budget exceeds the $2 million max. However, if we are applying for a single state or locality, can we instead upload our state-specific budget that falls below the $2 million threshold?
Yes.
Yes. Short answer, yes. We have time for one more question if anyone else has a burning question that they want the answer to before this webinar ends. But thank you all so much for all the participation and all the questions and for showing up. This has been amazing. The turnout has been amazing. So we are going to, we've already dropped the links in the chat to our RFP. If there's any questions, feel free again to reach back out to us. And also, I'm just gonna wait a little bit more to see if there's another question that comes through the chat, or if someone wants to come off mute really quick and ask a question. This has been amazing. I hope it's been helpful for you all. Okay, I'm seeing thank yous. Yes, you're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for the work that you're doing. So Jen, if we can just share the slide that has, there it is, perfect. Thank you so much. So here's the contact information. Specifically for questions regarding SurveyMonkey, I want to shout out Jen. That is the person you're going to go to for SurveyMonkey questions. Any other questions about the application process or anything else, please feel free to contact Monica, Helena, or myself. Again, the deadline to apply is May 30th at 11:59 Pacific time. And we are looking forward to seeing all of your applications. We're looking forward to building with you all and learning from you all. And feel free to share this with other organizations that you think would be a great fit. Again, we are funding 40 organizations. So yes, we're gonna get a lot of applications. We're expecting a lot, but also understand that we're selecting 40 of you all. So this is gonna be a big group. So please, if you think that you're fit for this cohort, we encourage you to apply. We'd love to learn more about your work. And like I said, continue to build this movement together for climate justice that connects racial justice to the fight. So with that, I think we're gonna wrap up a little early, so we'll give you all 5 minutes back. But thank you so much, everyone. I hope you have a great rest of your day.